I've been diving deeply into the topic of the masculine and feminine this last year, both on the subject of masculine and feminine nature, meaning what makes us different, what makes us unique, magical creatures in our own separate rights, and also what our wounding is. And so I want to share that with you all here today because it is something I feel is super duper present in the collective field. I mean, I'm seeing it come up in so many relational dynamics with my clients, with friends, and myself. And so what I've started to see over and over again is that so many of the conflicts that we think are about communication or compatibility or personality, they actually might be something much deeper, much more ancient, much more patterned and living inside of our bodies. And at the core of it, I keep feeling into these two very specific wounds, the masculine wound and the feminine wound. And the way that I've come to understand it, both through my own lived experience and the work that I do, is this. It's as my teacher explains it. He says, the masculine wound has its roots in scarcity and control, and the feminine wound has its roots in the suppression of the desire to use our voice. In other words, my understanding of this is a suppression of our truth. And when these two wounds meet in relationship, they don't just coexist as two separate entities, they activate each other. And so I want to emphasize that each and every single one of us, born male or female, has within us aspects of the masculine and aspects of the feminine. And so while I do center this episode around male role, female role, it's not just about gender. Although there are certain themes and needs and tendencies that may show up predominantly in one gender over the other, I also just want to emphasize that within us exist both of these archetypes. And so today, my prayer is to unpack this dynamic with a lot of sensitivity so that it brings you a sense of clarity as to why the relationship that you're in may feel like it has slowly ruptured or eroded over time. Maybe it's caused distance, maybe they're shut down, maybe a real lack of deep intimacy in your relationships. And so I will be covering what it is that men and women truly need, what we want, what we desire, what we long for, that really makes the relationship one of deep, deep, deep connection and joy and presence and passion. And if you're not currently in a relationship, but you feel that the desire for one is in your heart, then this episode is just as much for you. Because this is where you really get to understand these dynamics before you're in it, before patterns start playing out in real time. And maybe even as you're listening, you might even start to recognize yourself in some of the examples, in the dynamics, in the ways things may have shown up for you in past relationships. Right. And so I invite you to listen to this episode, not from a place of judgment and what I've been doing wrong, but from a place of awareness and possibility and even excitement for what can be created for you in your relationship. Right. Because that awareness, it changes everything about how you enter your current relationship or your next one if you're not in one already. All right. So let's dive in. Becoming a co-creator with the creator is your birthright. Together, we'll journey into your deepest authenticity. Because the more you align with who you truly are, the more effortlessly you call in the life that you desire and deserve. And most importantly, the more you step into your soul's highest purpose. Welcome to the Manifestation Method podcast, your #1 source for Kabbalistic manifestation. Here we combine the ancient wisdom of Kabbalah, modern psychology, and quantum physics to help you achieve real, tangible manifestation results with my proven Abra method.
I'm Ayelet Polonsky, and I'm here to guide you on your journey of manifesting a life that is aligned, expansive, and deeply connected to your highest self through the sacred energetic mechanics of Kabbalistic manifestation. To learn how to use Kabbalistic manifestation to transform your life from the inside out, go to ayeletpolonsky.com or download the Manifestation Method app. Let's open the gates of manifestation together.
Now, I want to pause here for a moment and name something because I know this topic can stir up a lot for people. And so when I speak about the masculine and the feminine, I'm speaking about roles and energetic dynamics inside relationship, right? What I'm not speaking about worth. I'm not speaking about superiority. I'm not speaking about putting people into rigid boxes or even denying the complexity of who we are, because we are all of the things, some of the times. And I'm also aware that for some people, this topic might land as controversial. It's sensitive. It can sound like I'm making blanket statements about what a man is or what a woman is and what each person should or shouldn't be doing. And so I really hope that you're not listening to this episode through that lens, right? Again, every single one of us is born, whether we're born male or female, we have within us masculine and feminine. And what I've come to understand very deeply is that men and women are absolutely equal in value, in dignity, in importance. But that does not mean that we are the same in how we function inside the relational field. And that is something that I'm going to stand behind. I think we each owe each other the decency of being present with one another and valuing one another and letting both of our voices be heard. But that equality I'm talking about does not necessarily mean sameness. The way these things get expressed and what we need from one another, I believe in a lot of relationships, maybe not all, but in a lot of them are just not the same. And when we try to flatten those differences and when we ignore the distinct ways that masculine and feminine energies move and respond, the ways we protect, the way we open and surrender, we actually lose the very thing that creates polarity and connection and intimacy in the first place. When I speak about the masculine and I speak about the feminine, yes, I am speaking in archetypal terms, but I'm also speaking in terms of male-female roles within relational dynamics as I've gotten to experience in my own, as well as what I've seen works in many, 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 many of the couples that I've had the pleasure of working with over many years. And I also just want to emphasize that, yes, I understand every relationship is unique, but in intimate partnership, there are often dominant dynamics that emerge. And I believe that understanding them doesn't limit us or put us into boxes. It actually gives us language and the ability to understand ourselves and be more fully self-expressed. And so there's clarity here. It actually gives us a way to work with what's happening and understand what's happening inside male-female roles instead of just reacting to it. Okay, so I invite you to really listen to this episode through that lens, not necessarily as this is how it has to be, but as an invitation to recognize patterns that you may already be living inside of that have just not been working in your relationship. And as you begin to understand them with more nuance and compassion and more truth, I think you can start to change the relational field between you and your partner. Okay, and so I want to begin by saying when I tune into the masculine wound, what I feel is this deep, almost existential pressure, right? A sense of there is not enough time, not enough safety, not enough room to fail, not enough space for the masculine to be soft. And so beneath that is a belief that says, I have to hold it all together, or I have to get it right, or I need to make sure that nothing falls apart. I need to be on top of everything. And then from that place, control becomes a strategy. And so what happens is the masculine is in control of outcomes, is in control of conversations, is in control of the emotional landscape of the dynamic between both partners. Because if the masculine can control what's happening, then maybe he can create enough safety in himself to finally exhale. And this is a lot of pressure for a man to be under. And that pressure, what happens is that sense of pressure that stemmed in control is a pressure that keeps him in his head. And when a man is in his head, he's not present with his partner. And most women, because they are just energetically tuned in, especially to their partners, and they tend to amplify what their partner is feeling. Like they amplify, meaning they feel it amplified in their own bodies. And so women instantly feel when their man is not present. And so the tragedy in this is that control doesn't actually create safety in relationship. That's an illusion. What it does create is it creates pressure and intensity and a kind of energetic force, this like underlying unspoken energetic that feels like this needs to go a certain way. And when that energy enters the relational field, it can really feel overwhelming for both parties. Okay. And so, and so there's how I interpret the masculine wound. And now let's shift gears for a moment before I kind of like wrap it all together in a ribbon so that I can drive my point home and create more clarity for you. When I tune into the feminine wound, it feels very different. It feels more like silence, like something that was meant to be expressed, something that she wanted to say, like a truth or a knowing that wanted to be spoken, but instead it got shut down or dismissed, or it didn't feel safe to share. And so she becomes silenced, right? And this is an ancient pattern, probably a dynamic that exists between child and parent, where she felt like her voice was too much or her feelings were too much. And so in order to maintain connection with her primary caretakers, right, she shut down. And because over time, what happens is the internalized belief is that my voice is too much, or my truth will create rupture and disconnection, or it's safer to soften or to accommodate or to hold it in. It's just safer that way. It's safer to be silent. And so instead of control being the feminine's way of operating, although sometimes this is also kind of a form of control if we really unpack it. But the real strategy here for the feminine becomes suppression. It looks like holding things back or filtering, right? Filtering or triple, quadruple thinking what she wants to say before she says it because it's too scary to just be outright direct. And so she second guesses or she goes into fawning. She wants to choose harmony over her own truth, over her own voice, right? All the things. It's all the things. But here's the thing. The thing is that truth that lives inside of her, that knowing, that voice that wants to be spoken, it doesn't just disappear for her. It lives in her body and it turns into tension and into resentment, which then turns into disconnection. And over time, it'll slowly start to create layers and layers and layers around her heart, which then shuts her down. And now when these two wounds, the masculine and the feminine, when they meet, right, when one partner is trying to control or to stabilize or to make something happen, and the other is trying to stay safe by not fully expressing what's real, right? What happens is, the more the masculine wound tries to control, the less the feminine wound feels safe to speak. And the more the feminine wound suppresses, the more the masculine wound feels like, what's going on? Why isn't she softening? And so he tries to push harder in order to get clarity, to get truth, to get the engagement that he wants. And then suddenly they're no longer meeting each other. And they're like, what happened? Right? But what's happening is they're reenacting something much older than the relationship itself. They're reenacting dynamic that probably has roots in how you were parented by your own mom, by your own dad. And now it becomes a pattern that just gets replayed over and over and over again in your own intimate relationships. Right. And so here's the thing. Something I hear over and over again is that every man just wants peace in his relationship. And I really do believe that. I believe the man wants peace, and I believe the woman does too. And I don't think anyone wants to feel that their nervous systems are activated or wrung out on a regular basis. But I think here's the part that no one is talking about. And here is where I'm actually going to speak more directly to the male role in the relationship. So men, if you're listening, I hope you hear this coming from my heart, and I hope it lands in yours. And don't worry, in a little while, I'll be speaking directly to the women and telling them what it is that you need and desire. So I'm not taking sides here, right? Okay, so you want peace, right? The man wants peace, but peace in your woman is not a personality trait. Peace is a response, and most likely it's a response to you. It's a byproduct of the environment that's being created between two people. And so it's not something that a woman just is, no matter what's happening around her, right? It's not that, oh, she's a peaceful woman. And yeah, women can be stressed out by kids and work and friends and all the other things. But when she comes home to her man and he's relating to her in a certain way, it can instantly soften her nervous system, instantly. And I've been sitting with this so deeply because I hear this all the time from the men that I work with. They say, I just want a soft woman, or I want her to be easy and calm and not so reactive. And so what I really want to say is, if you want a soft woman, then you have to stop putting her in survival mode. Because softness does not exist in survival. When a woman cannot express herself because it's not safe, she goes into survival mode. And when she is in survival mode, she's stressed out. And guess what happens when she's stressed? Her sex center literally contracts, both energetically and physically. And so she cannot be in her sensual and in her surrendered soft state when she is in survival. And so softness is what happens when the body feels safe enough to open. And so when you create an environment where it's safe for her to have her voice heard, when you celebrate her desires and don't take them personally and don't take it as a knock against you and don't internalize it as you failed, but when you can hold that soft, steady, masculine presence, right? She softens, she surrenders, she feels safe. And one thing I see over and over again in relationships is that no woman starts a relationship off as tense or nagging or guarded or sharp, right? That's not how the relationship begins. Most often than not, they start off as open and playful. She's warm, she's loving. She knows how to laugh. She wants to give to you. She wants to love and connect and to trust you. But something really subtle happens over time, kind of like 1,000 little tiny paper cuts. And she starts to feel dismissed, or she feels like she's being talked over, or she's being minimized, or like what she's feeling is too much or not valid, or she's got a loose screw, or that what she needs is inconvenient or invalid. or that her emotional world is something to manage instead of something to be met. And so slowly something in her starts to close. And really, it's not because she's trying to be difficult, and it's not because she's trying to create conflict, but it's because her system is adapting to her environment. And you are her emotional environment. And when her truth does not feel received, when she feels silenced, or she needs to like push harder in order to be heard, and or when that pushing to be heard starts to get labeled as nagging or as too much, underneath it is a woman who usually starts off speaking lovingly and softly, and she just felt like her voice didn't land in your system. And so she begins to turn up the volume. And again, it's not because she wants to fight, but it's because she's trying to reach you and she just doesn't know how. And if she can't reach you by fighting or trying harder, that if that still doesn't work, then she stops. Then she just stops. And then there's this part of her, and I think this is the most misunderstood part, because from the outside, what happens is when she feels misunderstood, or she feels spoken over, or she feels disregarded, then it starts to look like she's become cold or distant or detached. And what's actually happening here is it's not that she's stopped loving the man, or, it's that she brought her heart into the relationship fully, and somewhere along the way, her body realized it is no longer safe for me to stay open here. And so her body did the only thing it knows how to do. Her system started to brace as a means of self-protection. Things started to shut down. She starts to numb out. She starts to pull back. She starts to create distance. And it's not because she's punishing you. It's because she's protecting herself. And so when a man says he wants peace, what he's really saying is he wants to feel at ease in the relationship. But peace doesn't come from a woman suppressing herself. Peace comes from a relational space where she doesn't have to fight to be heard, where she doesn't feel like she has to earn her right to take up space, where her emotions are not treated like a problem, but like something that belongs and is welcomed by him. Right? Because when a woman feels met, again, when she's truly met, she naturally softens. And when I say truly met here, I don't mean that you just respond to her in a kind of cold way and you say, okay, that makes sense, or I see where you're coming from. I mean that you really let her into your heart and you enter hers and you meet each other there. And I know this is not easy. Trust me, I get it. But it is a recipe for a relationship, for alchemy and magic. And so you get to bring presence to this moving forward. And why this lets her land in her feminine and in her sensual, soft nature is not because she's trying to be more feminine, but rather because her body is no longer bracing. And so it becomes natural for her to surrender to you from that place. And let's face it, I think this is what every man wants, right? And this is where the deeper responsibility comes in. If you are constantly met with a woman who feels tense or reactive or shut down, the question is not, why is she like this? The question becomes, where is the relational field between us producing this kind of response in her? Like, what is it about the space between us that's producing this response? Right? This gets to be something that you co-create together through presence, through listening, through not allowing things to escalate when things get uncomfortable, through making it safe for truth to exist in the room, even when it's inconvenient. And I really also just want to clear something up here, because this is not about blaming men and it's not about removing responsibility from women. This is a two-sided relationship. And it's about understanding that we are constantly shaping each other's nervous systems. When we choose a partner, we are either creating safety for each other, or we are creating defense and shutdown. And over time, those patterns become personality. And so if you want softness, don't just ask for it. Create the conditions where it can live. because a woman who feels safe and seen and met does not have to be taught how to be soft. She naturally already is. Okay, so let's now pivot and speak to the women directly and honestly. Like, what is it that men want? And what do they actually need in order to rise into the version of themselves that is grounded and present and loving and capable? Right? So that, like, what is it that creates this relational coherence between both parties so that the man can feel like he's the man, like he is worshipped in his own right and appreciated for what he brings? Because I really think there's a deeper truth here that doesn't get talked about enough. And I really, really see this if we zoom out for just 1 second. I see that men are coming out of thousands of years of a very specific type of cultural conditioning. Before we continue, I'd like to share something that I've personally been using in my own practice, especially during monthly ceremonies and gatherings. I've been integrating the Rainbow Chakra full-length mat from Healthy Line, and it's become a really supportive part of how I ground my nervous system and create intentional space. This mat combines far infrared heat, PEMF therapy, and chakra-aligned gemstones, which makes it incredibly powerful for slowing down, regulating, and reconnecting with the body. Each time I get on the mat, it works every time. I feel a deep sense of warmth and a settling. I don't feel stimulated. I don't feel like I have to force anything. It's just my system remembering how to soften. So I use it during meditation, breath work, and like I said, I have all my participants use it during monthly ceremonies, and I've gotten such amazing feedback. Everybody just loves laying on this mat. It's really the kind of experience that stays with you even after you get up off the mat. So if you're curious about it and you want to learn more about how it works and how I use it in my own personal practice, you can click the link in my show notes or visit the link in my bio. There has been a collective reckoning around how women have been treated. And okay, yes, rightfully so. But one of the side effects of that is that many men today now carry a kind of underlying hesitation, maybe a guilt, maybe a fear of getting it wrong, a fear of being too much, a fear of being rejected, especially by the women that they care about. And so because of that, a lot of men have lost touch with their ability to powerfully claim what they want and to lead with clarity and to express desire without second guessing themselves. And so this piece is really me speaking to women. And it's not me dismissing the needs of the woman, but rather to, again, expand the lens to include his as well. Because when a woman understands how to meet a man in this way, it doesn't just help the relationship, it literally transforms it so that both parties are deeply, deeply, deeply fulfilled. And so one of the first things is this to the women. Can you genuinely celebrate the fact that men are not women? And I don't mean that you tolerate it or intellectually agree with this, but like actually honor that they are not women. You know, by nature, women tend to want more. We want more connection. We want more presence. We want more depth. We want more reassurance. We want more expansion. And I'm not saying that men don't want this, but like the pace and the rate, like we want it. Women want it. And we want that thing now. And we want it all the time. And that's not wrong, but men's nervous systems are just different. You know, they don't always process and expand and respond at the same speed or intensity when it comes to presence or the type of connection that women are longing for. And so part of the work here is learning how to feel him. You know, not just what you need, but what he actually has the capacity for in that moment. Because while you're while the woman's attention is often around receiving presents from her partner, the man is usually holding a bunch of different things simultaneously in his brain, right? And one of those file cabinets might look like a work-related file cabinet or a rent-related or mortgage-related, or, thinking about the trip that you're about to go on and making sure that it's amazing and all the things. And so tuning into what your man has the capacity for in that moment, because when a man feels that he's constantly falling short of an ever-moving target, something in him starts to shut down as well. And it's not because he doesn't care, but because he feels like he cannot win. And at the same time, men deeply crave aliveness in a woman, right? They are drawn to the feminine range. They don't just want one expression of you. They want to experience the fullness of you. They want your softness and your playfulness. They want your depth and your sensuality and your lightness and your mystery and your sassy and all of it. They want the woman who can be open and surrendered and also vibrant and expressive. And they don't want this in a way that's performative. They want it in a way that is like all of you, like the life force in you, the aliveness in you. Because when a woman is fully in her body, and when she's connected to her sensuality and her presence and her energy, it does something to a man. I believe it really nourishes him on a level that goes way beyond words. And this one is important. Your partner is not looking for the same version of you that the world gets. He doesn't want the high-functioning, fast-paced, career-driven, always-on, hyper-capable version of you that you bring into your work or into your responsibilities. No. He wants access to your heart and to your vulnerability and to your realness and your rawness and your emotion. This you being in your vulnerability and your emotion and your wide range of feeling actually awakens something really ancient in him. And it reminds him how to tune in and land in his heart as well. But the key here is you can't do this in a way that blames or attacks him. You have to do it in a way that lets him feel you. Because there is something so ancient in the masculine, in his desire to protect and to provide and to rise and to make you happy, and that part of him gets activated when he can actually feel your heart. And so when you show him from a connected place, when you're grounded in your root center and in your heart, and you speak from that place, you show him this matters to me, and this hurts, and I want you, and I need you.
Hi, Ayelet here. I just wanted to pop in and say I am so excited to officially introduce the Manifestation Method portal, membership, and app. This is your home for all things Kabbalistic manifestation. You'll get access to my monthly live workshops, soul deep hypno activations and attunements, all of our manifestation courses, and our global community of manifestors. And the best part? It's just $26 a month. That's less than a latte a week. Come manifest alongside me and start creating the life you desire and deserve. Head over to ayeletpolonsky.com to join us.
And so it gives him like this piece that turns on in him that says, I want to be her hero and I want to give her what she wants. But again, the key here is you cannot disconnect from your heart when you do this, because when you go into your head, into the proving or the correcting or the criticizing or the analyzing, it lands in his system as an attack. And when a man feels attacked, then he either shuts down or he pushes back, and rightfully so. But when he feels your heart, it really opens something up in him, and it opens up a desire to meet you and to rise towards you. And another piece that he really is looking for, and this is deeply important, is he's looking for your trust. A man wants to feel that you trust him. And I don't mean blindly or naively or, I mean like genuinely. that you see something in him that is capable, and that you look for the things in him that you trust, that you genuinely trust, and that you believe in his leadership, and you're not constantly bracing or questioning or second guessing him, because when a man feels trusted by the feminine, he is in his masculine, he expands, he steps up, he feels strong, he feels capable. And it's actually what awakens his ability to be super successful. Like the feminine awakens the potential for abundance that the masculine can bring into the relationship. And so he expands, he becomes more of the man that you actually want him to be. And it's really true. It's really true that the things that land deeply for a man are often very simple. I once heard a teacher say that there's like two, maybe it was three things that the man can never hear enough of. That really, it's as simple as that. Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. And those things are, I trust you, I respect you, and you're right. I trust you, I respect you, and you're right. Right? Those few words, so simple, go so much further than constant correction ever will. And the next thing is surrender. And I know, the man wants the feminine to surrender, wants the female to surrender. And I know this word can be really charged. But when I say surrender, I don't mean like losing yourself and losing your center and giving over your power. I'm just talking about softening your grip and letting yourself lean into him sometimes, and letting yourself be held and letting your body open instead of constantly bracing. And I really, really think that this kind of surrender requires a lot of courage. Yeah, but it awakens something powerful in the man because it really invites him to meet you there. When you can surrender to him, he gets to hold you, and then you get to feel held. And it really becomes this like win-win. And there's times where he's going to need to surrender into you, and you're going to have to be in your masculine, and you get to hold him and be, it's a dance. But I think there are primary roles in these dynamics that help the polarity and charge stay alive. And then there's just how the feminine moves through the world, right? There's an energy that either creates contraction or creates invitation. And I think when the woman shows up as really rushed or fast or sharp or intense, it kind of keeps both parties in a survival state. But when the woman kind of slows down and invites the masculine in through her body's movement, right, he then sees like the universe in her eyes, and he sees the waves of the ocean moving through her hips. When the female is able to soften her movements and her voice and her presence, when the female is actually inhabiting her body, it actually creates a completely different field between both people. It allows him to drop in, to open, to connect, and it creates space for play and sensuality and connection. It's so powerful. And this next part is, I think it just matters just as much as anything else. And that is that when he is showing up, when he is present, when he is loving, when he is showing you that he's trying, let him know. Don't only be super expressive when something is wrong. Don't only amplify what's missing. Don't only course correct. Because if all he hears is where he's failing, then he will associate the relationship with pressure and contraction. But if you can meet him with that same type of energy that you meet him when you're correcting him, with that same aliveness, that same enthusiasm, you meet him there when he's getting it right, that reinforces the behavior. That builds connection. That creates safety for him to keep showing up. And it really is that simple. I know it's not easy, but it's simple. And again, that doesn't mean you tolerate his BS or what's not working. And it doesn't mean that you abandon your standards and your needs, but it does mean that you become as devoted to seeing him in his strength as you are to calling out what hurts. And when this dynamic starts to shift, when a woman is connected to herself and expressed from her heart and honoring her needs without attacking, something very different becomes possible. There's like a nourishment that happens in the relationship where both people begin to receive each other. And in this kind of relational dynamic where the man can hold strong when the woman is being the waves and the moon, and she's waxing and waning, and she can be fully self-expressed and feel safe to be fully self-expressed. But when she is also able to soften towards the masculine and show and express her appreciation of him, and right, this doesn't just create a relationship that survives, it creates a relationship that evolves and thrives on so many levels. Again, both of these polarities or these dynamics is not about blaming men or blaming women. It's about seeing the pattern clearly enough so that we can step out of it. Because when the masculine begins to heal, then control softens into presence. There's less urgency, there's less force, there's more capacity to stay grounded, even when things feel uncertain. And when the feminine begins to heal and her voice returns, not in a reactive or explosive way all the time, but in a clear, embodied, truthful, rooted way, then I can speak, I can be seen, and I don't have to abandon myself to stay connected. And when those two energies meet, something entirely different becomes possible. It becomes authentic self-expression without force or aggression. It becomes speaking your truth without fear or bracing. But this really requires something from both parties. It requires the masculine to trust that he doesn't need to control so much in order to be safe. It requires the man to internalize that when his woman is upset, it doesn't mean he's failed. And it requires the feminine to trust that she doesn't need to suppress in order to be loved, and for her to have the courage to speak from her root and from her heart instead of from her critical head. And it really requires both parties to know how to regulate in the moment of activation and to breathe deep down into their bodies and before attacking one another, which is a real commitment to peace over war. It's a commitment to creating safety for each other and honestly looking at how we've created an unsafe environment for the person we love the most. And I really want you to feel that. Because so many of us are walking around thinking, if I just communicate better or differently, or if I just try harder, if I say the thing again, then something will eventually change. But what we're really doing is just having the same arguments over and over, thinking eventually we will see different results. And that is absolute insanity. We have to see the places in us where there's been scarcity and control and silencing and suppression or aggression. And until those are seen first in our own selves, by our own selves, we are just going to keep recreating the same dynamic, just with different people, different conversations, different circumstances. And so if you're noticing any of this in your relationship, I invite you not to go into blame, but to go into awareness, right? This is where real intimacy starts to become possible. It's not when we're perfect in our communication, but when we heal the wounds that are speaking underneath it and bring presence and awareness to them. And so as I close, I just want to take a moment and invite all of us into a deep breath. Let this land not in your heart, but in your body. This is not about leaving this episode trying to fix your relationship immediately or notice all the things that have been wrong and, or even about fixing yourself. It's just about gently, lovingly noticing more clearly, recognizing what might have been the cause of a breakdown, right? And seeing that there is revelation here for you. It's also so incredibly sacred, the work that you're doing. This is an opportunity to choose pause instead of reaction, right? A choice to speak from your heart instead of from your armor. And it's those micro moments, those small, seemingly simple moments. There's so many opportunities here. They're all just opportunities where we begin to change everything. Not overnight, not perfectly, but honestly and truthfully. And so if something in this episode stirred you or triggered you or opened something in you, I don't want you to rush past that. Stay with it. Get curious about it. That's where the work is. And that's where the possibility for something deeper, more connected, more alive, or more vibrant lives and begins. And if this episode resonated with you and there's someone you know who you think could benefit from hearing this message, please pay it forward. Give this episode, give this podcast a rating, a review, comment below. I love to hear from you more than anything. It lets me know it lets me know that there are real human beings on the other side of this. And I really, really, really love hearing from each and every single one of you. It makes my day. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for making it this far. I love you. I'll see you in the next episode. Here's to your rising.
If you enjoyed this episode, let's keep the conversation going inside the Manifestation Method Portal app, your #1 destination for Kabbalistic manifestation. Inside, you'll unlock the secrets of manifestation through my proven Abra method, rooted in Kabbalah, psychology, and quantum physics, designed to help you manifest real, tangible results from the inside out. Join our global community of manifestors, explore our signature courses, monthly live manifestation workshops with me, Ayelet, and access our transformational hypno activations and attunements to rewire limiting beliefs and align with your soul's purpose. The app is available now on the Apple App Store and Google Play. To sign up, head over to ayeletpolonsky.com. Becoming a co-creator with the Creator is your birthright. Let's manifest the life you desire and deserve together.